there were a number of things that came together, Chris, that created the book. I had written some books, and you may know the name John Kalinch. John wrote Being the Best You Can Be in MLM. He wrote The Greatest Opportunity in the History of the World. Well, with love and respect to John, and John's no longer living, he didn't write them, I wrote them. And that's not to diminish John at all. They were greatly his ideas. He was a trainer, so he prided himself in his ability to present and package information. He was masterful at that, but he wasn't a writer, and I was. And I talked John into writing a book. I said, look, anybody can stand on stage and talk, anybody can make a recording, but the world holds an author as a different something. And an author is special, so you got to do this. And I talked John into doing it. Well, we had a publication called Upline Magazine, and it was really the only one of its kind that existed at that time. Certainly, I don't actually think there's ever been anything that's been as good as Upline was. We searched for new ideas and new people. We broadened the conversation about network marketing to bring in a lot of economics and personal growth and just other stuff that most network marketers weren't talking about. So we were doing a really good job. And we would always ask our customers, our subscribers, how's your business? And Chris, I would say conservatively 95% of them were struggling. And I would say, I remember my conversations, I'd say, well, have you read John Kalinch's book, Being the Best You Can Be in MLM? Yeah. Well, I couldn't understand if they'd read John's book, why they weren't successful. John laid it all out. Do this, do that, do this, do that. All they had to do was do that. They would listen to Tom Big Al Schreider, and they'd go to his events. And I'm like, well, are you doing what Tom tells you? Because if you did, you'd be successful. Well, most of these people were struggling, and I didn't get it. And one day it occurred to me, and it really was a day, that maybe, at that time I'd never traveled around the world, maybe Americans are just guys and gals you can't tell them what to do. We don't like that. Don't tell me what to do. You know, we're independent. Don't tread on me. And okay, that opened up for me the idea, well, maybe if we told a story. So that was one part. Another part was I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in photography. So I was trained in being visual, in being able to imagine. And yet I struggled with the business of vision. And in network marketing at that time, just every upline, every trainer would say, you got to have a vision. You know, without vision, the people perish. You got to have a vision of what you want. And I struggled with that. And I thought, I'm trained, academically trained to be able to envision and visualize, and I'm having trouble. What's the cop on the corner going to do? Or the housewife, the single mom? What's she going to do? So those were those two things that were present. The third one was purely personal. I had written a number of books with other people they used to call it a ghostwriter. It's a term I hate because when you say you're a ghostwriter, people assume that the person you worked with was an idiot and you did all the work. And that's not true. I know how to write. I would work with people who weren't writers, and I would help them write. I would get them, and in an uncanny way, I don't think I've ever worked helping an author, a would-be author, learn to write, who after the first or second book didn't think they were great writers.
Well, then obviously you were very good at what you did.
Yeah, I was. I'm not a great writer, but I'm good. And so, but fiction, a story, not a chance. I didn't have it in me, Chris. And I had gone to a personal growth and development workshop, a kind of high-level puppy, and I got beat up. That was in the Gestapo personal growth days, like Est, where if you had to pee, they'd make you stay in the room for a week. And I got beat up about my doubts and fears about being able to write fiction. It didn't change, but I didn't forget it. And honestly, Christopher, one day I woke up before 5 a.m, and I had basically the first line of the book. This was my last opportunity meeting. I can't tell you where it came from.
Well, it came from everybody else that you've ever heard say that for the history of our entire industry. This is my last MLM meeting I'm going to. It's prophetic. When you said that, it spoke to me, and it probably has spoken to thousands of people who've read that first line. That's what brought us into the book.
Well, I woke up, that was on my head. I went, made coffee, went up to my office, sat down at my computer, and 3 weeks later, that book was done. It needed editing, it needed a pro, and my partner at the time, John David Mann, was hugely helpful in that. But that book basically took 3 weeks to write, and without getting too woo-woo on people, I truly believe that was 25, 6, whatever years ago. I truly believe that book was written through me. And it's just, I got plugged in. I got, Art Jonak says he was in the zone. I was, and that book just flew out of me.
When I first read that book, it was the very first short story fiction of any kind that I read from beginning to end and could not put it down. And it was probably because I had just spent 5 years inside the industry, and I had gotten the good and the bad and the ugly and the pretty. And all of a sudden I'm reading something that spoke to us, the network marketers. How did you come up with the characters, the different characters, the greatest networker in the world?
I don't have a clue. There were a couple of things. One, I believe, and I have lots of arguments with people have argued with me for a long time about this. Great. They can have their arguments. I believe that the vast majority of people, when they read, speak inside their heads. Now I'm told, well, that's if you're auditory, maybe if you're kinesthetic. And it's like, no. When we read, we speak inside our head. Therefore, the book needs to be a conversation. Me and the reader. It's got to be a conversation. Number two, it's got to have as much visual detail, scene setting, personality describing, so that you feel like you know these people. And those were not things I was necessarily trained to do, Chris. I'm a self-taught writer. I got 1A in English in all of my school years, and that was plagiarized. You know? So I must say with all sincerity and no irresponsibility, the greatest networker, like many things in my life, is the grace of God.
You took that book and you, in my opinion, instantly, John Milton Fogg was a name that our industry needed to pay attention to at both the highest level, as well as when a new distributor would come in and somebody would say, is this a pyramid? Or they would say, is this selling? The easiest thing for me to do is say, instead of trying to argue against, to just say, you see this little book, it's going to take you 3 hours to read it. Once you read it, you'll understand what I believe is network marketing. That's what this book has done for me. Even to this day, I have people listening to the greatest networker in the world audio on YouTube. I have them reading your book. I believe that what you've done is good for, it doesn't matter what kind of compensation plan. It doesn't matter whether it's a service-based system or a product-based system. It's good for everything. It's about what is leadership in our industry. What are we really supposed to be here for? I was always taught it was each one teach one. And that seems to be a lot of what you're doing, is that through that book is that the master teaching the student who's going to teach the student who's going to teach the student. Really, that is what network marketing is. I understand that now, all of these years later, you've been doing lots of seminars. Is that correct? Seminars, consulting, things like that? As well as the
I do some, yes.
Now, your new project that you're doing right now is called Speaking and Listening. And is that an offshoot of the Greatest Networker, or is that a completely separate kind of program? Tell me about that.
Well, when you read The Greatest Networker, one of the things you'll see is it is a conversation. The whole book is a conversation between the people in the book and the book with you, the reader. And it began, my appreciation of that, of communication, really predated that. I was a marketer. So it was important for me to learn how to communicate to my market. So I'd always been doing that. I'd been studying the great advertisers and copywriters, and that's how I got into writing to begin with. So I had a real appreciation and admiration for that. But really, Chris, in my 30 years in this business, and I know we're coming up on a break, and there's more to say about this, but I think that communication, speaking and listening, is the single biggest factor for success, not just in this business, at home and in any career. Communication is the single most significant factor there is.
Well, I would like to delve into that and spend a few minutes on just speaking and listening, what you're doing now. What I'd like to do is I'd like to end this segment and begin our next segment. Would that be okay?
Perfect.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, everybody, for being on this segment with John Milton Fogg, the author of The Greatest Networker in the World, one of the best network marketing books ever, and the best fable in network marketing that has ever been written. Thank you so much, John Milton Fogg, for being on this version of Live with Chris Thomas.